So in the last few days, it's been reported that Man City have accepted a £81 million fee for Julian Alvarez to move to Atletico Madrid, and it will see the Argentinian move to the Spanish capital probably by the end of the week. But I think this transfer is just one more that shows how ruthless Pep Guardiola is, and which may be somewhat of a character flaw, maybe you could argue his lack of loyalty to players, in my opinion is one of the reasons why he's so successful in his career. From all accounts, Alvarez and Pep Guardiola, they didn't fall out. Alvarez said he wanted a warmer climate, so did his family, and also he wanted more game time, which, to be fair, I can see why. He is one of the best strikers in the Premier League, and he rides the bench for Man City because obviously Erling Haaland's in front of it. So it looks like it fits all parties. Man City have nearly trebled their original investment. It's about £30 million, and Atletico Madrid have one of the best young strikers in Europe. So on the face of it, I think it's fantastic. But this just shows that Pep Guardiola just will get rid of a player at the drop of a hat. I think we've seen that in previous. Let's look at Man City with Aymeric Laporte or João Cancelo. These two were instrumental over the last 5 years of Pep Guardiola's reign. Aymeric Laporte, at one point, you could argue he was one of the best centre-backs in the league. Liverpool won the league and rightly so, deserved it. However, people argued that Laporte missed a lot of time that season and is why potentially Man City didn't win that league. I don't think that way, but I know that is a big argument that they've had. And then you look at João Cancelo. Before Cancelo moved to Barcelona on loan, he's currently still at Man City. He was, you could argue, the best left-back in the league. He was best left-winger in the league at the point because he was just brilliant. He was so attacking on that left wing, and he seemed like it was finally the solution to years, and I still think it's ongoing, years and years of Man City's problems with the left-back. Obviously, they had Fabian Delph, obviously they had Benjamin Mendy, and so many players, but I thought when Cancelo came in, it was perfect. However, it was reported that Guardiola and Cancelo had a bit of a fight, and lo and behold, Cancelo was on the next player out. Let's even go further back. In 2008, Pep Guardiola, who was a newly appointed manager at Barcelona at the time, got rid of Ronaldinho. Ronaldinho won the Ballon d'Or in 2005. He's my footballing hero, and he was an absolute icon in his day. However, partying a bit too much, and I believe Pep didn't want him to distract Lionel Messi, who obviously has become the best player of all time. But you could argue maybe a weaker manager would have... I mean, how could you get rid of Ronaldinho? And not to forget, he also got rid of Deco, who apparently also was a bit of a distraction to Lionel Messi. So he shipped them both out of town, and look how well it did for them. He created maybe the best football in domestic side we've ever seen. And it's something that I respect him as a manager because of this, but it could be a character flaw because years ago I read the Ibrahimovic autobiography, and he criticised Pep Guardiola so heavily in that book. I believe he had the quote, "Why buy a Ferrari if you're going to drive it like a Fiat?" And apparently Guardiola just hated confrontation in his squad, which you could argue this is potentially why he ships players off who might become a hindrance or an issue for him, because if someone who doesn't like confrontation, this is, to be fair, coming from maybe the most confrontational footballer we're ever going to see in Zlatan Ibrahimovic, then obviously he's going to just move players on because he doesn't want to argue with them. And that might not be the case anymore because, let's face it, Ibrahimovic was at Barcelona in the late 2000s, early 2010s, because obviously Guardiola is going to change from then. He was in his first 5 years of managing. But you can compare it to someone like a Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp, I'm a big Liverpool fan, and one of my biggest criticisms of him, which sounds a bit silly, is that he's too loyal to some of his players. Bobby Firmino, Gini Wijnaldum, Jordan Henderson, Fabinho, James Milner, all these players that are just, you could argue, the legends of the club. They were past the sell-by date, in my opinion. Gini Wijnaldum played 1 or 2 seasons too long, as did Bobby Firmino. I think it hindered the squad because if he was a ruthless like a Pep Guardiola, and yes, I know there's more to it with the squad harmony, maybe Jordan Henderson, maybe Firmino were instrumental players within the dressing room and you couldn't replace them, whereas Cancelo might have been a hindrance. But still, I think there are a lot of these players that he could have got rid of earlier than he did, but because of his loyalty to the players, maybe personal feelings, or maybe because what they've done for the club, he kept them on. And unfortunately, they're a legend of the club. However, I do think between the elite of the managers, that the bit of ruthlessness between the two might separate the best from the third or fourth best. And unfortunately, that left Liverpool with a very aging squad. I believe at one point they had the oldest squad in the Premier League, which it showed because they had tired legs. And if they'd reinvested earlier, as they did last season, and they brought in a lot younger players for high prices, then maybe they might have been in a better position to keep on going with Man City instead of dropping a bit of the pace. But I just find it interesting because I'm so aware it's such fine margins in football, obviously, and if Pep Guardiola got rid of Cancelo, and then he couldn't bring in Akanji, he couldn't bring in Nathan Ake, and they struggled with those players who filled in basically at left back for Cancelo, then he would have been seen as a fool. Same with Laporte. If Ruben Dias didn't become one of the best centre backs in the world, if he didn't manage to keep on progressing John Stones and bringing Gvardio and Ake and Akanji, then again, he would have looked like a fool. However, he didn't. And I do somewhat admire these moves because I do see it slightly with Mikel Arteta at the moment. I think with Arteta, look at Granit Xhaka, for example, the captain of Arsenal. He had a great season last year at Leverkusen and had great Euros. But Arteta agreed with him that he had to move on, and he sold him. He knew Declan Rice was coming in. He had brought Jorginho in a bit earlier. And even though he didn't look it at the start, I think it worked out for the best. Likewise with Emil Smith-Rowe, likewise with Zinchenko, all people who were instrumental with Arsenal the season before last. Arteta didn't think they were good enough at the time, and I know Smith-Rowe has had injuries, and I think it's unfortunate that he's had to go to Fulham instead of keeping his career at Arsenal on track. But I do think there are similarities keeping Tomiyasu in the side when Ben White was in, and then moving Tomiyasu out, even though he's playing well, to put Ben White back in the side. I think all of these things do make a great manager, and like I say, fine margins, it could ruin a team. However, I think these managers are getting it right, because I think there is that Pep way of thinking that you do seem to be an issue, and if you are an issue, you're not bigger than the club, and you'll be shipped on the next plane out as quick as you came in. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you think this is a good approach. Obviously, it's worked out well for Guardiola, but you could argue it hasn't worked out well for other managers. If you could leave a like on the video, that'd be fantastic, and if you subscribe, I'll have a lot of content coming for the upcoming season. But thanks for watching.